Solving America's obesity epidemic won't be easy, with over 100 million obese Americans and another 80 million who are classified as overweight. Not to mention the 14.7 million children suffering from obesity, equivalent to 20% of the youth population. And just to think that back in the 1960s, the obesity rate was only 13%. Now here we are with over 60% of Americans being either overweight or obese. And all for what? An 80% increase in the chance of developing type 2 diabetes? Or is it the 81% higher risk of having migraines? We can keep going down the list, such as a 55% increase in the chance of being depressed, or the fact 70% of people suffering from sleep apnea are overweight or obese, and the list goes on and on. So how does this epidemic not only affect you, but everyone else around you? Looking at this chart, we can see that obesity is linked to more chronic conditions than living in poverty, being a smoker, a heavy drinker, or a former smoker. Simply put, obesity is king of the hill in correlation to chronic conditions. May I also mention that obese individuals spend more on healthcare than those four groups as well. So just how much money is thrown into the medical industry to fight this problem? Well, according to a 2018 study done by the Milken Institute, the US spent $480 billion in 2016 alone, which accounted for 47% of all the direct healthcare costs. Then you need to add the additional $1.24 trillion spent on indirect costs due to a lack of economic productivity, making the cost of chronic diseases caused by being overweight and obese a staggering $1.72 trillion. That's equivalent to 9.3% of the US's GDP in 2016. While only 8.7% of public healthcare spending is attributed to cigarette smoking, with 60% being paid for by public services such as Medicaid and Medicare. Unlike obesity though, cigarette smoking levels dropped from 21% in 2005 to 15% in 2015. Kids, don't smoke cigarettes, it doesn't make you cool. In total, the US spent $1.1 trillion on direct healthcare costs, yet by once again adding the indirect costs, it jumps up to $3.7 trillion, equivalent to 19.6% of the US's GDP in 2016. By 2030, it's estimated that 83.4 million Americans will have 3 or more chronic diseases, compared to only 30.8 million in 2015. Now, healthcare costs in the US have always been expensive, costing $10,300 per person, with $3,300 in direct costs and $7,900 in indirect costs. Looking at the finer details though is where you'll find the difference in medical costs for normal weight versus obese individuals. Adults with obesity have higher annual medical bills by $2,500 or 100% on average, ranging anywhere from class 1 through 3 on the obesity chart, with the cost percentage increase anywhere in the neighborhood from 68 to 233%. Typically, obesity costs public health care programs an additional $2,868, while only a $2,058 increase for private health insurances. On a nationwide average in direct medical costs, a normal weight individual paid around $2,500, a class 1 individual paid around $4,200, while a class 3 individual paid $8,354, which is $5,850 more than what a normal weight individual typically paid in a year. To no surprise, California was the worst state to get medical treatment if you were obese. A normal weight individual paid only $1,500, a class 1 individual paid $4,300, yet a class 3 individual paid on average $17,647. That's a near 1,200% increase compared to people who were normal weight. Across the nation, inpatient services if you were normal weight were $375 a year. However, obese individuals on average paid $1,463, a 290% increase, and depending on which class of obesity you fell under, you could find your medical expenses increasing 178% for class 1 and 923% for class 3. Obese individuals spent $917 more per year on prescription drugs compared to normal weight individuals, an astonishing 187% increase, and that's excluding anti-obesity medications. Let's think of it this way: for every 1 additional unit of BMI on your body, your medical expenses increase by $201. Now to answer the question you've all been waiting for, how do we solve America's obesity epidemic? The first thing America has to do is ban corporate lobbying by these food companies. Corporations spend millions on lobbying, benefiting their financial agenda. A good example of this is when the soda industry spent $7 million in California on a ballot that made it harder to tax the industry. Not to mention all the lobbying that's spent on GMOs. Not to say that GMOs are bad, but that's about 3 weeks of research, confusion, and very little sleep that I just don't want to jump into yet. The second most important thing is to ban infiltration research, which is basically companies paying schools and research groups money to create biased scientific studies. The food and beverage industry spends $22.4 million a year on lobbying, including $5.4 million by Coca-Cola alone. That's more than the tobacco industry, which spends $16.7 million a year.
From 2010 to 2017, Coca-Cola spent $146 million on scientific research, partnerships, and health professional activities. Both Coca-Cola and PepsiCo funded 95 national medical organizations from 2011 to 2015, while lobbying against 29 health bills that aim to reduce soda consumption and improve diet. Coca-Cola funded the publication of 389 articles in 169 journals from 2008 to 2016.
Regardless, science and corporate influence need to be kept separate, yet almost every Ivy League college is on corporate America's payroll. I know this next statement will be controversial, but we should probably ban sugar from most food consumption. There are near to no benefits to consume sugar unless you're trying to make it on my 600-pound life. Sugar is 8 times more addicting than cocaine, and while one of those is often used by college students to have fun while partying, the other makes you fat. Kids, don't do drugs, they're bad. Well, that's at least what Nancy Reagan told me. Since I'm already on the subject, we should also require food manufacturers to go back to the 50s and 60s. You know, before America freaked out thinking that fat was bad, so instead of using fats in food products, they just added sugar and carbs. Why did America allow this to happen? Thanks for asking. You see, back in the 60s, the sugar industry funded a study wanting to refute concerns that sugar is involved in a possible role for heart disease.
So they sponsored a Harvard scientist to create a biased research study, which ironically concluded that fat and cholesterol are bad for us and caused heart disease, which was then published in the New England Journal of Medicine in 1967. And to think, he did all that for a small price equivalent to 50 grand in today's currency.
Thank God I can trust every other scientist and politician in America to have high moral values and refuse to be bought off.
Just by looking at this chart tracking obesity over time, you'll notice obesity rates skyrocket after the demonization of fat in the 60s and early 70s. Today, 75% of Americans consume too much sugar, in which many of them would be classified as sugar addicts. And if you've had your doubts, carb addiction is a real thing and has aided in the obesity epidemic.
I hate to break it to you, but society needs to stop spreading the myth that working out helps you lose weight. All it does is make losing weight seem that much harder.
Studies have shown that physical activity accounts for only 1 to 3% of weight loss, meaning 97% of your weight loss relies entirely on what you eat. In other words, you don't need to work out to lose fat.
One more thing as this leads into my next point, Americans need to stop viewing eating healthy as a diet. If you want to lose weight and stay at that weight, you need to make a lifestyle change. You don't just decide to start eating healthy for a few months only to once again eat like shit and add on a few pounds once breaking your quote-unquote diet. Now, a fat tax would probably benefit most Americans, it would just happen to piss them off. Yet, it needs to be done differently than how countries like Japan and Denmark handled it. Japan had the right idea, but it failed in one very drastic way: the lack of personal responsibility.
Yes, I understand that environment, family, and lack of nutrition knowledge can make it harder for you to lose weight. Yes, I know that schools, big media, expert scientists, and big corporations have been pumping out bullshit information for decades. Yet, at the end of the day, none of them force you to sit down and eat a pizza. Acknowledge that the process will be long and hard in the beginning, but the only one who can save you from yourself is you. So how do we incentivize Americans to want to lose weight?
First off, allow health insurance companies to charge different rates based off your BMI. Not only does this reward individuals for their hard work, but it'll become an incentive, making it cheaper for those with normal weight while increasing prices the higher your BMI. Since normal weight individuals have less annual medical expenses, it only makes sense for them not to pay as much. Tax percentages used to fund Medicaid, Medicare, and other government programs pertaining to health should be based off BMI scores. The lower your BMI, the less you pay. The higher your BMI, the more you pay. If the government should have to spend more money on you, then you should have to pay more into it.
BMI should be tested at least once a year when you go for your yearly checkup at the doctor's office.
Waist measurements would not be a bad idea to implement while at your checkups. That being said, they should not affect your insurance prices, as insurance and tax rates should be based off your BMI. We could have 5 different brackets to classify BMI scoring, which each bracket having its own set price for both insurance and taxes. Normal weight, overweight, obese class 1, class 2, and class 3. To help solve child obesity, school lunches need to be completely overhauled. Schools often prepare cheap, crappy food for their students, which not only causes weight gain, but is associated with a higher risk of developing several chronic health conditions. Only high-quality meats, fruits, vegetables, and rice should be provided to students. Our future generations deserve much better than the disgusting foods they currently get. Also, I don't know which idiot thought it was a good idea to take recess out of school, but they obviously don't know the first thing about childhood development. I mandate at least 1 hour of recess every day in school. Now please understand, for what I'm about to say, I'm going to be 50% sarcastic and 50% truthful, but in a fucked up way it still makes sense. Looking at multiple health leaders around the world for various governments, you'll notice the start of a correlation. More and more health leaders around the world are obese. And as the old saying goes, you should always practice what you teach. Like, come on, even Kim Jong-un got the memo. No matter your education or how smart you appear to be, if you can't take care of your own health, how will you be able to take care of your nation's health? No matter how much this might piss people off, it needs to be said. People suffering from obesity should not be the representing image of public health. There's nothing wrong with loving your body and being positive. How you wish to live your life is up to you, but don't try and force others to lower the standards of health just to make you feel happy and validated. Our future generations deserve so much better than the current direction that we as a nation are on. Change is possible, health is possible, and happiness are all possible. Will you fail sometimes? I can guarantee it. Will you want to quit when life gets hard? Absolutely. But you deserve better than to just give up and not continue trying. So please, don't give up, don't quit, and whatever you do, don't stop trying. Thank you all for taking time out of your day to watch this video. I hope you all the best.